Hello folks, and today we're going to have a quick look at the new Space Wolf Codex. I've glanced at the rules and I'm going to highlight the main changes that jump out at me, and I may do a more in-depth review once I've had time to sit down with the Codex and maybe got a few games with it and against it sort of done with. But for now it's just sort of like the major things that jump out at me and the major changes that I can see from the quick look at the rules I have had. Overall, I feel that it is a big step forward for the Space Wolves. Space Wolves. Um, they seem to have gained a lot more. They seem to feel a lot more like Space Wolves should. Looking at the new Codex, I think you're going to see a bit less of the lots of long fangs sort of base army that a lot of Space Wolf players used to bring. I think you'll still see it, but I think there'll be a lot more fun and variety to add in the Codex. As well as the Codex does appear to be generally more competitive for competitive players out there. They did lose some variety, so there will be some Space Wolf players out there that are not too happy with that. The Games Workshop seem to be sort of streamlining the entire game. Codex specific special rules seem to be disappearing more in favour for I can't talk today. More normal special rules, universal special rules. There we go. That was a different way to say it. Over the board, things are generally priced a lot cheaper. And some things are a lot cheaper in the Codex. There are a few things that are more expensive, but normally when they are more expensive, they gain something. For example, the Wolf Lord, which off the top of my head I think is 5 points dearer, but he also gained the Belt of Rust Basic, which off the top of my head I don't think he had Basic in the old Codex. I used to always give them the Belt of Rust, so I might be mistaken, can't talk. But generally, what am I talking about? But I do think they didn't have the belt in the old one, but they do come standard with it now. So that justifies the point increase, and it was an auto include for your old Wolf Lords anyway. Another change that will spring out like mad is that Logan is now a Lord of War. Now everyone assumed this is what was going to be the case, and everyone assumed correctly. After the Orc Codex with Gascal being made a Lord of War, it appears that every single main army leader, like Mephiston and Abaddon, looks like they're all going to be Lords of War now. I'll be interested to see how the Space Marine one does, because they've got so many army, you've got this Ultramarines and their main leader. Will it just be him, or will all the chapter masters be Lords of War? And then will the standard, can't say that word, chapter master be a Lord of War? I don't know. But we're getting off track here. There was a lot of new stuff in the Codex, the Flyers and the new Dreadnoughts, as well as Logan's Chariot, like it or hate, but I'll talk about them a wee bit later. There's a new special detachment for the Space Wolves, which allows them, they need to take at least 2 HQs, but they're allowed up to 6 HQs. 6 HQs in the one detachment. And also, units can now gain outflanking from that detachment on a dice roll, which when they've got a HQ with them and they're a troop choice, the dice roll gets a wee bit easier to make. But that is a lot of outflanking they could potentially gain thanks to that detachment. Moving on, because this is going to be a quick review. The relics they have relics now, sort of like relics of the Fang, I think they're called. They're mainly close combat orientated, and they're even more so challenge orientated. And there's psychic powers are back there, which everyone assumed would happen once they disappeared for 7th edition, and they have been. The psychic power, all the classics are back, such as Living Lightning, which is now the Primaris power, but they're all a wee bit weaker, but they're also they still feel very good. Like Living Lightning is a very good Primaris power. Another thing a lot of people are disappointed with is the sagas. The sagas are now being turned into the new warlord traits. Another of the major changes is that there's hell weapons now. There's a few different hell weapons, but the sort of basic one seems to be very similar to a missile launcher, but better. It's like a slightly stronger missile launcher because it's got the two fire modes, similar to frag and crack missiles, but stronger. Then you've got the different versions, like there's the one that gets the large blast instead of the small blast, which I think is on one of the flyers. But across the whole book, points are generally a lot lower. Things that are in, for example, in the Space Marine Codex as well, the prices have been brought to the same as them. For example, Land Speeder is now 50 points, I think, in both Codex. Off the top of my head, so I might be slightly off of that. And special characters. Moving on to the HQ now to just talk about the things that jump out at me. Special characters have dropped an arm and a leg in points. They're like, a lot of the HQ choices were like around 200 points, some of them up in like later end of the 200. Most of them are now under 200. Some of the special characters have dropped some of the special characters have dropped about 50% or something. Not quite that. No, it wasn't 50%. It was, the old price was 150% of the new price. That was it. Just some of them. So there's a big, huge point difference. And also, from what I've seen of the special characters, they appear to have changed quite substantially. For example, Najal no longer has his Storm, but he does still appear to be a very strong character. He's lost his Storm, he's been lowered in price pretty drastically, and he looks like he's going to be awesome for denying the witches, because he's got like Adamantium Will and Psychic Hoods and Psychic Mastery level 3 and all sorts. In the elite choices, the things that jump out at me are that Wolf Guards are now 2 units, is the main thing that jumps out at me. You get Wolf Guard Terminators and Wolf Guard Normal. They're 2 different units now. Scouts lost behind enemy lines, which is the main thing that jumps out at me there. Lone Wolves lost that pretty unique rule that if they live, they give your opponent a victory point. That's no longer a thing. And obviously there's the new Dreadnoughts and the new options and the new Dreadnought character, the Murder Fang, with the murder this and the murder that, with the murder special rule, murder, murder, murder. In the same line with all Space Wolf stuff, the wolf this on the wolf that, the wolf tooth on wolf tooth boy, and they're not very colourful when naming things, these Space Wolves. Moving on to the troops, Grey Hunters have changed. They now no longer get their close combat weapon, the pistol, and the bolter, all basic standard. They did get slightly cheaper, but they have to pay to upgrade to get the close combat weapon, which makes them a little bit dearer than before. At least I think off the top of my head. I think it's like 1 point each way. And Blood Claws have improved quite substantially. They are quite a lot cheaper. It's only a few points per model, but when you're taking units, that is a big change. And they now have rage instead of that old rule where you sometimes they would charge and you wouldn't be able to control them, but so they're generally a lot stronger. They're still, I don't feel as competitive as Blood Claws, but I normally don't play competitive, and so I won't feel like I'm shooting myself in the foot when I take them, because I think I'm one of the only people on the planet that used to take them. Fast attack. Now, one thing that I found weird, I think the Orc Codex did the same with the truck, is that all your old dedicated transports are now fast attacks. I'm not sure I like that. You can still take them as dedicated transports, so they're not taking up a slot, but now also allies can, you've got ally shenanigans with them being fast attacks and able to start in the vehicle, and ugh. Um, Other large changes in the fast attacks is the Swift Claws and Sky Claws. It's the same as Blood Claws again. They're generally what I said for them, the same for whatever I said for Blood Claws generally applies to them as well. They're still not hugely competitive, but they are a lot better. And one thing that everyone should probably know by now about the new fast attack of Space Wolves is the two new flyers. A lot of people seem to hate the models. I personally love them. A giant flying dog's head. Yep, that suits the Space Wolves perfectly, and it's just so fun. Just like in another way, I think of the transport one with the huge transport capacity. To me, just reminds me of the rules of it. Reminds me of a giant flying fist that slams into the enemy and gorges out tons of troops, which seems to suit them as well. Moving on now to the heavy support. I did not notice nothing jump out at me in heavy support. So yeah. That is generally everything now that I'm going to talk about. It was just a quick review of all the things that jump out at me. I'd like to do a more in-depth one. If this video, I'm doing it completely for fun, but if people like this video and want a more in-depth one, then just say. And once I've had time to sit down and look everything over, so I know I'm not missing anything, I'll do a more in-depth one. And also once I've had a few games under my belt, if people want more on the tactics sort of side of things, I'll do that too. But as I say, I want to learn the Codex better before I do anything like that. If I did not mention models, because there was quite a lot I didn't mention, like Thunderwolf Cavalry, I did not mention them. It's because generally they just got a price drop and there was nothing that major about anything other than that. But you can pretty safely assume the models I didn't talk about generally got a price drop. A few got increases, but mainly they got price drops. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like it if you liked it, and say if you want a more in-depth review, and I would gladly make one at some point, because I find the videos fun to make. Also, I forgot what I was going to say now. The brain fart. I was going to say, yeah, that was it. If you disagree with me in any way on anything I've said, please leave a comment and tell me why. Or if you've got any opinions about anything I've said, leave a comment and say why. With Warhammer, it is a very good way to learn, is to bounce sort of your opinions off their opinions and what you think the rules are and what they think the rules are, because that is the easiest way I think that people learn and enjoy the game, as long as everyone's civil, that is. So yeah, once again, hope you enjoyed the video. I am signing off. Hope to play you someday.